The Vancouver Canucks are finding ways to win despite a slow start by Elias Pettersson. The Philadelphia Flyers may have some bad injury news in goal, and the Columbus Blue Jackets have overcome tragedy to get off to a surprisingly good start. We've got all that and more on today's Locked On NHL podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Gil Martin here, and welcome everybody to the Monday edition of the Locked On NHL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On NHL your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts so you get new episodes as soon as they drop. Today's episode is brought to you by Indeed. Still searching for a great candidate for your company? Don't search, just match with Indeed. It is my pleasure to welcome back to the show the co-host of Locked On Canucks, Trevor Beggs. And Trevor, lots of stories surrounding the Canucks. Let's start with the obvious one. Elias Pettersson, MIA. What's going on?
Man, oh man, Gil, I wish I had an answer. And it's funny because, it gets brought up every day on our show, in our comments. Everyone's going, what the heck is wrong with Elias Pettersson? And honestly, it seems like the dude was abducted by aliens. Like we even had a segment about conspiracy theories about what happened to Elias Pettersson. And yeah, I don't know if someone captured him in about January of last year. So it's really been, for those who don't know, about a 50-plus game stretch where Elias Pettersson has been at a 40-ish point level. And this is a guy that has 100 points in his career. This is a guy that won the Calder. Last January, he was the NHL Player of the Month. He had like 13 goals in 14 games. And since then, I don't think he has 13 goals in 50 games since then. I think the stat was he has like 7 goals and 24 points in his last 42 regular season games. I mean, this is just, again, a completely different player. And you see some guys a lot of fans are angry. You see some media members trying to grasp at straws, being like, oh, well, he was out there for the game-winning goal, which he was against the San Jose Sharks on Saturday night. But you watch that game in totality, and just every time he has the puck, he's trying to thread the pass because he's a playmaker, and he's just turning it over, and he's coughing it up. He's spending a lot of time in his own end. It's just a completely different player. And look, the Canucks right now, credit to Patrick Allvin and Jim Rutherford. They have constructed a team that has enough depth to withstand this. But again, this is a team that entered the season with Stanley Cup aspirations, and I just don't know if the team has Stanley Cup aspirations with Pettersson going at a 40-point pace.
What is the biggest difference maybe in the way he's approaching the game that you could see?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because Rick keeps talking about practice and, he's got to practice harder. I mean, he's just lacking juice. He's lacking a step. I don't know. To quote Austin Powers, it just feels like he lost his mojo. Like his mojo's just gone. It's funny because you see him, again, being aggressive. Like he's trying to go in there and make a hit. So I don't want to say it's for lack of not trying. But I don't know, man. It's just his confidence is just completely shot right now. It's that instinctual playmaking that made him so good for his first 400 NHL games. I mean, maybe a little less than 400. It's been a 50 game bad stretch here. But I mean, the dude still right now has 412 points in 413 career games, right? Despite this bad stretch. I mean, he is an electric player. But right now, he just seems to be completely lacking confidence with the puck. And he just seems to be a step slower, too. I mean, we learned that he battled tendonitis through last spring and that it might still be affecting him, but he looks a solid step or two slower, and his playmaking is just gone.
I mean, you mentioned the team can overcome it. How have they been able to do that?
Well, right now, I think it's, and I see in your bullet points here for you guys watching on YouTube, I think Kevin Lankinen's one big reason why. And Kevin Lankinen so far, and again, why didn't anyone sign this guy in free agency on July 1st? Other backups, I guess people didn't want to pay big bucks for the backup or anything like that. But Kevin Lankinen right now is 5-0-2 for the Vancouver Canucks. He's just been stellar for this team, man. It's meant something because Archer Shilovs, I mean, don't want to poo-poo on that guy too much, but, first game he lets in 6 goals. Second start against Tampa, he's fine, but he loses. Then he lets in 6 goals against the Devils this week. He has the worst save percentage in the NHL right now. So Kevin Lankinen stepping up first and foremost has been a big reason why. I think the second one is just the depth of this team. You look at the forward group, and early on in the season, you had Nils Höglander chipping in with a couple goals. Connor Garland actually leads this team in 5-on-5 ice time right now. He's been so solid, and he's kind of been tasked with getting Elias Pettersson out of the slump right now. They've been on the same line for the last few games. Hasn't really worked, but Garland continues to produce. Teddy Bluger looks like a more physical, improved player from last season. Kiefer Sherwood, who's leading the NHL in hits, he's chipping in offensively. And Pius Suter, who was on the Miller and Betcher line in the playoffs last season, right now is the fourth line center, leads the team with 4 goals in his last 6 games. So this is a deep team. Again, it's just, you're only going to go so far when your star players aren't really performing.
Let's talk a little bit about the defense. You mentioned that it hasn't necessarily been even though statistically the team seems to be playing well. Talk to me about what's going on the blue line right now.
Yeah, well, I think in Vancouver, everyone knows a guy by the name of Quinn Hughes by now. And I mean, this might be a bit of a hot take, but for my money, I think Quinn Hughes might be the Hart Trophy winner this early on in the season. Now, he's not leading the league in points or anything like that, but just his impact at both ends of the ice is so incredible. I mean, the Canucks, in terms of the shots that they're creating and the possession they hold, are, they're kind of controlling about 2/3 of possession when Quinn Hughes is on the ice. And this team is around 40% when Quinn Hughes is not on the ice. I mean, it's a drastic difference. And, I always go to our friends over at Hockey Stat Cards. And for those who don't know, they kind of take stats, goals and assists, and then the fantasy stats as well. And then they give a game score at the end of each game. Quinn Hughes right now, he was just overtaken by Kirill Kaprizov for the highest average game score in the NHL this season, which to me is a good indicator of, who the MVP is. Right? Connor McDavid's always up there as well. Quinn Hughes, again, he gets notoriety for his offensive play with the puck, but defensively, like, just nothing gets by him. It doesn't matter that he's a small guy. He's always in position. His stick is always active. And again, at a time when Pettersson looks like a shell of himself, Quinn Hughes might be the best version of himself right now. So on the Canucks defense, the Hughes and Hronek pair, for my money, it is one of the best in the NHL, if not the best. The bottom 4 kind of leaves something to be desired, though. Vinny Desharnais has looked a bit lost. You're kind of hoping Adam Foote will work his magic throughout the season. Carson Soucy and Tyler Myers, I mean, their stats have been putrid. They've been turning the puck over a bunch. And you have Eric Brandstrom, who's come in, who's kind of a cap dump, more or less, in the Tucker Poolman deal just before the season started. He's looked good in stretches. Actually, for the most part, he's been really good. But, he's had a couple of moments where, he got caught up high on a goal against the Sharks on Saturday. Derek Forbort missed some time. But really, it's just like Hughes and Hronek, and then there's a lot of question marks, right? And the Canucks at some point, they need to acquire defensemen if they're going to truly compete for Stanley Cup. Because right now, the way it's constructed, again, a lot of question marks after that first pair.
So what is the key in your mind? This team seems a little inconsistent right now. What is the key to them becoming contenders this year to fulfill the promise that everyone was looking at when the season started?
Yeah, it's that's the $1 million question, ain't it, Gil? I mean, first and foremost, is Pettersson finding that mojo again? I don't know what it's going to take. Again, 50 games is a pretty long time to not be good. Again, from February last season all through the playoffs and the start this season. So that's first and foremost. I'm like, I just don't know how competitive this team can be in terms of being a Stanley Cup contender if Pettersson's a 40-point player. And again, to think he'd be the next Huberdeau, it's a scary thing. I'm scared, man. Halloween's over and I'm still scared. Okay. But the second thing I think is adding another top pairing or a number 3 defenseman to this team, right? We've checked out some names before on Locked On Canucks. Guys who could be targets, obviously, like Rasmus Anderson's out there. Jake Wallman might be a good low-cost target. Colton Parenko's a guy I've been kind of interested in to see if, the guy's got a lot of term left. Maybe St. Louis retains $1 million, and then you got a $5 million guy for the next few years. So there are going to be options out there for the Vancouver Canucks, but they do need to add a defenseman at some point because the way it's going right now, this defense is going to be a problem.
All right. Well, Trevor, why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you on social media?
All right. Well, appreciate it coming on, Gil, as always. Okay. Despite the fact that I got, sick kids, I was puking a couple of days ago. You're always patient with me as I make my way on this incredible show, Locked On NHL. You can find me on Twitter at Trev Beggs. You can find Locked On Canucks on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also find my partner, Kyle Bowen, last name Bhawan. He does 80% of the work on the show. So give that guy a follow on Instagram or TikTok or wherever you like to connect on social media.
All right, Trevor, thanks so much. Always a pleasure. Today's episode is brought to you by your friends at Prize Picks. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action. Join more than 10 million users and sign up today. Prize Picks puts its members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I can get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It is guaranteed. So again, download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNHL. You'll get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup on Prize Picks. Download the app and use code LOCKEDONNHL. Prize Picks. Run your game. Today's episode is brought to you by Indeed. We're driven by the search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. You can use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of Locked On NHL will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/LockedOn. Just go to Indeed.com/LockedOn right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/LockedOn. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. It is my pleasure to welcome to the show Rachel Donner of Locked On Flyers, also my regular Friday co-host on Locked On NHL. But today we're going to talk some Flyers and a little bit of a rough day Saturday for Philadelphia, not just the shutout loss, but Sam Ersson leaving the game early. What do we know and how bad could this be?
So as of recording, to be clear, we could know more by the time you're listening to this. We know it's a lower body injury. He did leave the game in the first period on Saturday, replaced by Alexei Kolosov, who is also an interesting story, the fact that he's the backup. But losing Ersson is going to be a huge, huge factor because he has been pretty rock solid in net for the Flyers thus far, keeping them in close games, even when they don't end up winning the game. So this is going to have a huge impact on the Flyers moving forward, again, depending on how long Ersson may or may not be out.
Who would be the goalies going forward if Ersson has to miss a little bit of time?
Right. So entering the season, Ivan Fedotov was the prescribed backup goalie for the Flyers. He got a contract at the end of last season, which interestingly currently has him getting paid more than Sam Ersson, which is a whole other thing. But, you know, he had been very, very successful in the KHL and came over and has had a bit of a rocky start to his season. And because of the situation with Alexei Kolosov, a Belarusian goaltender who was also in the KHL, and there was some, real questions as to whether or not he was going to come over this year. The Flyers wanted him over; they had signed him and brought him over at the tail end of last season, where he saw some limited action with the Lehigh Valley Phantoms, but there had been sort of some word from the Kolosov camp that if he wasn't going to get NHL action, he didn't want to come over. But the Flyers were like, "We own you; you have to." And so he did. And they kind of worked things out. And Kolosov got several starts with the Lehigh Valley Phantoms. And I think because Fedotov had struggled, they called up Kolosov. And so the Flyers are currently carrying 3 goaltenders, which they can because defenseman Cam York is on IR and they have the roster spot in order to be able to do it. with this injury, it looks like Kolosov is going to take the lead position with Fedotov as the backup. Fedotov was the de facto e-bug for the Flyers at the game versus the Bruins on Saturday. And that was long-winded, but there was a long way to get there.
Obviously, neither of the two backups have great numbers in limited action. So,
No.
the Flyers have got to hope this
Well,
is not a long-term injury.
I will say Alexei Kolosov has looked very solid in his 2 NHL games thus far. So small sample size, but coming in cold for an afternoon game when there's no full morning skate, I think is a very difficult thing for a goaltender to do. And he made 20 saves on 22 shots against a very determined Boston Bruins team on Saturday. So I'm counting that as a win for him anyway.
Well, that was the bad news. Ersson, his status still hopefully we'll get some more information soon. But the good news, Matvei Michkov named the NHL's Rookie of the Month for October.
Yeah, that was very good news for him. He got off to a very good start in his 11 games in October, 4 goals and 5 assists. Very good, very effective on the power play in those games, and really kind of added an element to the Flyers power play that hadn't been there. The Flyers power play was absolutely dreadful last season. Now it's just bad, which is an improvement, I would say. But some of the early success anyway was largely due to Michkov's presence. But Michkov has struggled the last few days a little bit. John Tortorella had not, I wouldn't say benched him, that's the wrong word, but had him sit for several minutes when he saw that he was struggling, showed him some things, and really only put him out there for his power play shifts for a section of the previous game before Saturday's game, and then let him play for the duration of the game. And I think that's helpful. He's 19 years old. He's going to take some time to develop, but certainly a tremendous start to the season for him in the month of October. Now kind of the rest of the season will take shape, and he's definitely still got a lot to learn as a young player.
What are the things he really needs to work on the most right now?
I think that his vision is so far ahead of what is going on out there to some degree that he has to learn how to work with the teammates a little bit better to make things happen. I think, teams are certainly, and in a lot of ways, rightfully so, going after him to some degree. And I think he's handling that very well overall. I think he can dish it out as well as he can take it in a lot of circumstances. But again, he is younger, and so he's going to bear the brunt of that, and sometimes not be able to accomplish what he wants to on any given rush. So I think there's a lot there, and he is making some mistakes in trying to be maybe too aggressive through the middle a little bit. Sometimes he really likes taking a shot from the slot. That seems to be his thing, and those shots are very difficult to take unless you are more experienced, right? So I think there's a lot going on there, but I think, I have no doubt that he'll be fine. It's just going to take some time, and he'll adjust over the course of the season.
Wasn't the best month to start the season for the Philadelphia Flyers. Need more consistency. Talk to me about what this team needs to do to sort of get on track and be more competitive.
Yeah, I think there's 2 things going on. The first is that they had a very strong transition game last season that seems to have evaporated. That John Tortorella's mantra is always that good defense leads to offense, right? And the good defense has been struggling. So they haven't had the opportunity to transition to offense. That their defense has played a lot better in the last few games, maybe a little bit less so in this last Bruins game, but the 2 wins they had previous, like the defense actually played pretty well. But the transition aspect of it wasn't there. They were not getting really strong breakouts to be able to head down the ice in the other direction as often as they'd like to. And then when they get to the other end of ice, aren't getting multiple opportunities. It's a one and done situation and a lot of chances. So that's kind of issue number 1. Issue number 2 is lack of scoring. Just the shots are not going in. And key players like Owen Tippett who, had a hugely successful season last year, got a big contract, is like he has one goal. And so, like, you really, really need some guys to come through. The middle six is just totally bone dry right now. You have a top line that's with Mitchkov, Konechny, and Couturier, who seem to be getting the bulk of the chances. And then you have some guys who have either been in and out of the lineup, like Bobby Brink, like Noah Cates. They're getting some opportunities, but like the middle lines are just bone dry. And that is not going to win you games when you can only score 2 goals in a game.
At least the special teams look good, though.
Yeah, I mean, they're better. The penalty kill, which was good last year, is not quite as good this year, but still very, very solid. And like I said, the power play is off to a much better start overall. The second unit is better than the first, and they really need to invert that. As much as you want to have, like, Mitchkov is on that first unit, but I think that the second unit is showing a lot more creativity and have a lot more pep. And I think that they really should switch it around for a little bit, especially because they have Emile Andre, who got called up to replace Cam York. He's been in the last couple games, and he has a sense and a mind for the power play and is very offensively driven. And so with him quarterbacking that second unit, I think that's the way to go for the Flyers.
All right, Rachel, why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you and your co-host on social media?
You can find Locked On Flyers at Locked On Flyers on all your socials out there. And my co-host, Russ Cohen, is at Sportsology. I am at R. Miriam. And we are out there covering the Flyers every day.
All right, Rachel, thanks so much. Looking forward to seeing you Friday.
Absolutely.
Today's episode is brought to you by Built. Listen up, renters. Have you ever felt like you're stuck in this loop of rent payments, just watching your money vanish into thin air? It's time to turn that rent game around and start earning some serious rewards. That's where Built Rewards comes in. Built is breaking ground as a neighborhood rewards program that hooks you up with points on your rent. Every month, pay your rent and watch the Built points roll in. Use points to jet off on a dream vacation. Put your points toward a flight or hotel stay with 500 plus airlines and 700,000 plus hotels and properties. You could also use your points to book fitness studio classes, redeem them toward a future rent payment. They're designed to meet your lifestyle. Pay rent hassle-free through Built Rewards app. Your rent game just got a major upgrade. Built points have been consistently ranked the highest value point currency by the Points Guy and Bankrate. Earn points by paying your rent right now when you join built.com/LockedOnNHL. That's JOINBILT.com/LockedOnNHL. Make sure to use our URL so they know that we sent you. Join built.com/LockedOnNHL to start earning points with your rent payments today. Today's episode is brought to you by your friends at FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more, all on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. Hockey fans, check out the latest odds for your favorite hockey team. Use your knowledge of the game to get great bets on FanDuel. Again, visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the National Football League. It is my pleasure to welcome back to the show the host of Locked On Blue Jackets, Jay Foster. And Jay, it's been an interesting start to the season. I have to start with this. I don't think any team has overcome more adversity in the month of October to start this season than the Columbus Blue Jackets.
Oh, for sure. Like, at the beginning of September, I think there were a lot of people that thought the Blue Jackets wouldn't field a team this year. You know, I saw a lot of people saying they might be worse than the expansion year Washington Capitals, which, for those of you who weren't around, in 1967 or whenever it was, they won 7 games total. So there were a lot of people saying the Blue Jackets might not win 7 games this season. Well, I have good news for the haters. The Blue Jackets have 5 wins on the season already in 11 games. They're currently sitting NHL 500. They've got a record of 5-5-1, and they have battled through so many things. Just all of the things, even without talking about the Gaudreau loss, which was a huge loss in and of itself. Boone Jenner, out long-term. Erica Branson, out long-term. Kent Johnson, out long-term. They just got Dmitry Voronkov back, who had 18 goals as a rookie last season and was a big part of the Blue Jackets' middle six. He just made his season debut on, I think, Friday night. So, there've been a lot of pieces missing on this team, and there are going to continue to be a lot of pieces missing. But they have, I think, decided to, it's like at the start of every Blue Jackets game, Meredith Gaudreau is on the screen at Nationwide, and she says, love the game that John loved. Love the game the way that John loved it, and I think that they've decided to do that, and they're just like channeling their inner Gaudreau, which has been really, really great to see. I think Sean Monahan has been phenomenal for this team, and that is a signing that I thought was fine when it happened, and now I'm looking at this, and I'm like, man, he is a different player. He is leading the team in goals. He is leading the team on the ice. He has been fantastic off the ice. Like, he has really, really changed this team for the better. And it would have been so easy, I think, for this team to, and I believe that this is something we've talked about on this channel as well. Like, it would be so easy, or it would have been so easy for this team to just kind of like get stuck in their grief and their sadness and like struggle every single game. And they haven't been. They've been winning. They've been winning convincingly. I know that they're coming off a rough weekend, but the teams that beat them, the Washington Jets, that's not correct. The Washington Capitals and the Winnipeg Jets, I believe, are like a combined 18-3 on the season so far. So like, this is not. I am okay with them getting run over a little bit. Do I love that they lost 5-0 in the first period to the Capitals? No, but this is kind of an expected thing. I think that there are things they need to do to be better, but as of right now, the Blue Jackets have responded better than maybe anyone has expected. I'm including myself in that. And I chose to be, optimistic about this team, and I still think that my goal for this team at the start of the season was 40 wins. I still think that's very reachable. That is just under 500, and the team is already they're playing at 500 hockey right now. And I think that they are still missing some key pieces, so they're going to get better from here. We hope.
Got to talk about coaching. I mean, this is such a delicate situation. So much, like you said, it would be easy to give up. Talk to me about the leadership the coaching staff has provided and which players have really stepped up to provide leadership.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I think the coaching is such a huge thing here. And I thought the Everson hiring was fine. He wasn't my first choice. He wasn't my last choice. I talked a lot to our wonderful friend over at Locked on Wild, Seth Topal, about it. And he basically said, listen, Everson, you're going to get what you're going to get with him. He's someone that relies a little too much on the veterans, but also he makes teams into more than the sum of their parts. And he has done that with the Blue Jackets, and I think people put a lot of weight on coaching in this league. I don't know that the Blue Jackets needed a Jack Adams level coach in the same way that and I'm sure we'll talk about goaltending in a second if I'm reading the little thing on the side here correctly. They don't need Jack Adams coaching. They need an adult who can give them structure, who can give them something to aim for. I think bringing in a brand new coach when the team is in this much kind of turmoil and change, and Don Waddell made even before the Gaudreau loss changed so much about this team. Even before that, he still was like, yeah, there's going to be half a dozen 8 new faces on this team this season, probably. And the team looks really different to last year. And I think that's helped. Having a brand new coach who doesn't have any of the baggage of the previous coaches, doesn't know like who was good at what and who played where. Like, I think the biggest example for me, obviously Kent Johnson is injured right now, but he was lights out for the Blue Jackets in the preseason, in the beginning of the season. I think he played I think he had 4 points in 3 games or 4 points in 5 games before he went down with an injury. He really responded well to the coaching, and he was playing on the power play. He was playing on the penalty kill, which is something he had never done before. We're seeing Adam Fantilli on the penalty kill, which we hadn't seen before. Like, Ersson is basically just going in and being like, oh, this guy looks like he might work on the penalty kill. Let's give it a shot. Which after several years of, I'm not going to say phoning it in, but several years of just kind of doing what is expected of the coaching, to have someone like Ersson come in and bring that structure and bring that discipline and like bring something new to the team, I think has really, really helped as well. So like, he's been massive for this team. And I do think, again, if the Blue Jackets manage to sneak into a playoff spot, I think there are going to be Jack Adams votes in Dean Everson's future.
You mentioned the goaltending. We have to talk about it. Elvis is in the building, but there seems to be some trouble elsewhere.
Elvis has always been a streaky goalie. Has been his problem. You know, I think inconsistency has been his biggest thing. Like, on some days, he has all the talent in the world, is the thing. And on some days, he looks it. He was spectacular this week against the Oilers, who are a team that have, if you can shut down Leon Draisaitl in a game, worth it. You know, obviously Connor McDavid didn't play after about 15 seconds of that game, but Elvis, I thought, was spectacular in that game. Follows it up 2 nights later with a shutout against the Islanders. Sorry, Gil.
Yes.
I forgot who they played. But, you know, and again, like, I'm sure you'll agree, Elvis was excellent in that game. And we've seen excellent performances from Daniil Tarasov as well this season. However, we've also seen some poor performances from both goalies this season, you know, like, and again, this weekend, it's tough to say, well, Elvis didn't match up to Connor Hellebuck, or Eric Comrie was in goal, actually, you know, but the Jets are the Jets. I don't know if the Islanders have played the Jets yet this season.
No, not yet.
And anyone who has paid attention, or if their teams have played the Jets, they are a wagon. They are lighting it up at the minute. Best team in the league, bar none. Washington Capitals, a surprise. Also, quite a good team this season, which I don't think anyone was expecting. So, like, do I think Elvis is the kind of goalie that's going to allow, like, 1 goal on 61 shots, which is what he faced against Edmonton and the Islanders combined? No. Do I also think he's the kind of goalie that's going to allow 6 goals every game? No. He's probably going to be somewhere in the middle, which is fine by me, because, like I said with Dean Eversson, the Blue Jackets don't need Vezina-level goaltending. They need league average goaltending. If they can get out of this season with, like, a team save percentage of, like, let's say a 900 or a 905 even, I am more than okay with that. They don't need to have a goalie that is doing, you know, these kind of 923, 925, like 930 save percentages throughout the whole season. You know, they don't need the goalie to be the MVP every single night. Part of that is because they are on just the most unsustainable shooting heater of all time. Right now, I think they scored, I think, 35 goals on 18 expected goals previous to this weekend's slate of games, you know, so it's regressed a little bit after that, obviously, but like, they are exceeding expectations in the offense. The defense is much improved. They're allowing about 8 shots a game fewer than they were allowing last season, which is helping. The goaltending will figure itself out. It's very up and down at the minute, and my assumption is it will probably settle more into the average of what we expect. But I don't think that they need better than average from Elvis or Tarasov right now.
Right. We'll see how that plays out. I know you'll cover it every step of the way. Jay, why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you on social media?
Again, I feel like I said this last time, but I don't feel bad like telling people to pay attention to the Blue Jackets this year, because they are fun as hell. So you can find me on Twitter at _Jacob Foster, JAKOBFORSTER. You can find the show at LO_Blue Jackets on Twitter. You can find us anywhere you get Locked On NHL, your favorite podcasting app of choice. You can find us over on YouTube. We're getting real close to 1,000 subscribers. So if you want to help a brother out and get some daily Blue Jackets news in your life as well, that is where you can find us.
All right, Jay, thanks so much.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
All right, I want to thank my guests. I want to thank Trevor Beggs of Locked On Canucks, Rachel Donner of Locked On Flyers, and Jay Foster of Locked On Blue Jackets for joining me today. Thank you for making Locked On NHL your first listen today. For your second listen, find Locked On Fantasy Hockey. Become a fantasy hockey expert and get the edge over your league mates with daily tips from Steal and Flip. Find Locked On Fantasy Hockey on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Gil Martin. I host the Monday edition of Locked On NHL, and I co-host the Friday edition along with Rachel Donner. Don't forget, we're here every Monday through Friday, bringing you the biggest stories from around the National Hockey League, so make sure you join us for that. Until tomorrow, have a great day, everybody. Stay safe, and thanks for listening to and watching the Locked On NHL podcast.